Veritas Files here. I hadn't intended to do another video on this, but the nature of the comments and private messages I was getting led me to believe that, the nail needs to be driven in just a little bit more to provide some understanding. There are a lot of people that really are certain that they understand this topic, which I find really odd given the lack of genuine open debate about it and the almost universal misunderstanding of my comments. I find it really interesting that everyone thinks that they understand the topic. But, maybe I'm missing something. We'll find out, I guess. In any case, I'm going to use some publicly available comments as sort of a representative sample of what I got in the PMs. I'm not picking on this particular person, but his comments were so perfectly representative that I'm going to go ahead and use a few of them as talking points. One of the major objections that I got had to do with my using heterosexuality, defining marriage as being heterosexual in nature. Well, let me just explain the reason this is all explained in the previous video, but let me just sort of go over it again. The reason I did that is because it is the heterosexual nature of a relationship that provides the basis, by nature, as a group, as a rule, by design, provides the basis for procreation, for continuance of human civilization into the future. There is no other relationship that does that. That is why it is that relationship and that relationship alone that qualifies it as marriage. That's also why, and the only reason why, government has an interest. Because generally governments want to promote the good, and they want to either not promote or punish the bad, or the unhelpful, whatever. In any case, that's why I talked about heterosexuality. It's the only relationship that does that, and therefore it's the only one that qualifies as marriage. But the objection I got to that was that not every heterosexual union produces children. This is true. This is true. What I will say to that is that that does not do anything to negate the fact that all children come from a heterosexual relationship. Every single one. You cannot, even if you're talking about a test tube baby, you had to get the material from a man in order to do that, okay? And when you're talking about natural procreation, any other form of sexual relationship will bring procreation to a screeching halt. Okay, it would be the end of civilization if heterosexual relationships did not exist. It would all be gone within 100 years. In any case, a violation of a detailed rule with regard to that because of age or infertility does not violate the theme at all. It does not violate the nature of heterosexuality at all. So that's not a genuine objection. I understand why it might be posed as an objection, but it's not a real objection because it doesn't do anything to negate the fact. Anyway, the other thing I would say is that some people said things like, look, I'm libertarian at heart, so for me this is all about freedom and liberty. I would submit to you that that is not true. You may in fact be libertarian, but you do not understand the nature of what we're talking about if you think this is about freedom and liberty for them and not for me. Okay? Because I would submit to you that if you understand the nature of this, regardless of what your personal view is, the liberty issue, the liberty and freedom issue of this has more to do with me than it does with those who are proponents of same-sex marriage. The reason for that is what I talked about in the previous video. There is no liberty, I repeat, there is no liberty being denied because they have precisely the same liberties that you and I have. They have the same liberties that you and I have, and they can make use of them at any time they so desire. What keeps them from making use of those liberties? What keeps them from participating in marriage? It is their own internal dispositions. It is their own internal mental dispositions that keep them from participating. That is not a liberty being denied by you or me or any government. That is a liberty being denied by themselves. Okay? So to the extent that they are denied a liberty, It is a choice that they are making to deny themselves the opportunity to participate in marriage. It has nothing to do with something being denied them by the government or anything else. Marriage is what it is. It's not anything else, and if they choose to participate, they are free to participate. If they choose not to participate because of their own internal dispositions, they are free to do that as well. There is no liberty being denied. Now, in a different video or something else, if you want to make the case for a new liberty that right now I don't have, that they want, you can make that case. But that's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about marriage, right? And in that context, there is no liberty being denied. However, there will be a liberty denied me in the future on the basis of your reasoning. If you're truly libertarian, this matters to you. If you're not, then it doesn't really matter to you, okay? I'm not speaking to this one person I've taken the comment from. I'm speaking to lots of people that said this kind of thing. If same-sex marriage, if sexual behavior is treated the same way that we treat race and gender, which are unchangeable, immutable characteristics, if you treat an unchangeable, immutable characteristic the same way you do a behavior, which is something that is chosen, you can either participate in behaviors or you cannot. You treat those as identical things, which they are not, then what happens to my view? Okay? My ability to hold a point of view, to have the freedom of conscience, which is essentially all that the First Amendment is really about, the freedom of conscience. It's expressed in various ways, whether it be freedom of the press or freedom of assembly or freedom of religion, but it's really all about freedom of conscience. What happens to my freedom of conscience if we treat behaviors exactly the same way, or at least a specific behavior exactly the same way as we do race? What happens? My point of view is sanctioned. My point of view in some cases is made illegal. Children could be taken away from people like me. It could be ordered that we can only send our kids to public school because that's the only place they're going to be taught the truth, some say. I would be forced maybe to teach my children something that is contrary to my religious beliefs, or my reasonable, rational beliefs that happen to coincide with my religion because I believe that it's actually true. Those are genuine liberties that it makes sense would in fact be denied in the future if we treat behavior the same way we treat race. Because my point of view, my freedom of conscience would be treated as if I were a member of the KKK or a Nazi. Can you imagine a college being created that taught race hatred, that taught that the extermination of the Jews was a good thing? Can you imagine that being allowed? Really? But that's what my point of view would be essentially equated with, even though it's not. I don't care what anyone else does in their bedroom privately. I do care if I am forced to accept that as a matter of public policy and then am forced to try to teach my children stuff like that. I will not do that. But if you're truly libertarian, if you actually believe in liberty and freedom, then you should be concerned about that. You really should. To the extent that you're not, I would really urge you to rethink the idea that you are libertarian at all. We are so socialized by our cultures, and this is becoming more and more obvious to me all the time, that we are really unable to think outside of the social boxes that we have come from. Now, there are subsets within our culture like Tea Party and things like that, conservative, liberal, where we can think slightly differently than someone else. But we are so socialized by our culture with regard to certain issues like this one that we cannot hold points of view. We cannot hold points of view that actually make sense or are in harmony with genuine freedom and liberty in many cases. It's absolutely fascinating to me. I don't care what anyone does privately. So they have their liberty. And again, with regard to the marriage issue, they are not being denied any liberty. So my point of view is actually consistent with freedom and liberty. The other point of view is not. I don't really know how I can make that more clear, guys, but at least I've made the effort. Okay? And with regard to the other comment about government not being involved at all, you know, I kind of vacillate on that just a little bit. I actually think government should be promoting good and either not commenting on or punishing evil. Not commenting on things that don't matter and punishing wrongdoers and things like that. But that's sort of a secondary issue beyond that we haven't really taken care of. I mean, until we come down on the issue on the basic issue itself, I don't know how helpful it is to talk about whether government should be involved or not. But what I will say is that for a long time in the United States, government has been disadvantaging marriage. You do better if you aren't married in the United States than if you are. If you don't get married and you end up having children, you get checks automatically in the mail, basically. This is not the case if you're married. If you're married, there is a marriage tax penalty that's been in place for decades. You do much worse when you're married, so they disadvantage it now, which is probably a good part of the reason, or at least part of the reason why marriage has been declining. And to the extent that marriage is declining, you see a dysfunction growing in society. And to the extent that we continue on this road and we decide that we just want to allow it to continue to degrade, marriage that is, we will continue to breed dysfunction and dysfunction and dysfunction into society until such time as that we lack sufficient cohesiveness to keep it together. And we are quickly heading to that point. So I don't know at what point we reach critical velocity with regard to that, but it's not that far away, and given the economic conditions that we face, it wouldn't surprise me if that doesn't exacerbate a lot of this and cause things to fall apart more rapidly. We'll have to see. I'm not a prophet in that sense, so I'm content to wait and see. Anyway, feel free to comment, private message me, argue, make videos. Thanks, guys. Take care.